Have you ever wondered why some people stay in her mind without trying, while others do everything right and still get forgotten? That question matters more than you think. Because deep down, every human being wants the same thing: to be remembered, to matter, to feel chosen without begging for attention. And if you've ever felt invisible, overlooked, or replaceable, this message is for you. Most people believe attraction is about saying the perfect thing, showing more effort, or proving value. That belief quietly destroys confidence. It turns desire into pressure. It makes you chase, overthink, and lose yourself just to hold someone's focus for a moment. And the painful truth is this: the harder you try to be unforgettable, the easier it becomes for someone to forget you. The human brain does not remember intensity. It remembers emotion. It remembers how it felt in your presence. It remembers safety. It remembers relief. And this is where everything changes, because attraction is not built through impressing. It is built through emotional imprinting. When someone associates your presence with calm, understanding, and freedom, their mind returns to you without effort. Not because you demanded it, but because their nervous system trusts you. You don't need clever lines. You don't need manipulation. You don't need to become someone you're not. What you need is awareness. Awareness of how the mind forms attachment. Awareness of how words shape meaning. Awareness of how subtle emotional signals create powerful psychological loops. The strongest attraction does not shout, it whispers. And those whispers echo longer than noise ever could. Think about this. The mind constantly looks for emotional resolution. When it feels understood, it relaxes. When it feels pressured, it resists. When it feels free, it leans in. This is not opinion. This is neuroscience. Dopamine increases when curiosity is present. Oxytocin rises when safety is felt. Cortisol drops when judgment disappears. And the mind naturally revisits places where these states exist. This is why some people stay in our thoughts long after the conversation ends. The real power is not in controlling her thoughts. It's in becoming the place her mind feels calm returning to. That power comes from restraint, from emotional intelligence, from knowing when not to speak, from knowing how to say less but mean more, from choosing presence over performance. When you stop chasing attention, your energy shifts, and energy is always felt before words are heard. If you stay with this message, you will learn how small, intentional words can create big emotional effects. Not because they are magic, but because they align with how the human mind actually works. You will begin to understand how attraction grows naturally when pressure disappears, how confidence forms when you no longer need validation, how being grounded creates curiosity without force. By the end, you won't just know what to say, you'll know who to be. And that shift changes everything. Because when you stop trying to be unforgettable and start being emotionally safe, your presence lingers, your absence is felt, and without chasing, without proving, without effort, she finds herself thinking about you. Not once, but again and again. When you understand this, something inside you starts to relax because you finally see why forcing connection has never worked. Chasing feels logical on the surface. If you want something, you move toward it. But emotionally, the human mind does the opposite. When it senses pressure, it pulls away to protect its freedom. This is not rejection of you, it is protection of autonomy. And once you see that, you stop taking distance personally and start responding with strength. The fastest way to lose emotional gravity is to chase validation. Every extra message, every forced check-in, every attempt to secure reassurance sends the same signal. It says, I need you to feel okay. And the mind does not feel drawn to need, it feels burdened by it. Not because need is wrong, but because uncontained need creates emotional weight. Attraction requires lightness, it requires space to breathe, it requires choice. The moment someone feels chased, their nervous system goes into defense. Not fear, but resistance. The brain whispers, I'm being pushed, and when that happens, desire shuts down. Curiosity dies, respect fades, what replaces it is obligation. An obligation never creates longing. This is why doing more often gets you less. You are not losing value, you are losing polarity. Real confidence is quiet. It does not rush. It does not over-explain. It does not beg for clarity. It trusts timing. It respects silence. It understands that attraction grows when both people feel free to move. When you give someone room to choose you, their mind begins to explore the idea of you. When you remove that room, their mind only thinks about escape. This is where emotional maturity changes everything. Instead of reacting to distance with fear, you respond with steadiness. Instead of filling silence with noise, you let silence do its work. The brain hates unfinished emotional loops. When you are calm and grounded, and you do not chase closure, the mind naturally returns to you to resolve what it feels but cannot define. That is not manipulation. That is understanding how attention works. Pressure says, stay. Presence says, I'm here. One creates tension. The other creates trust. And trust is what allows attraction to deepen over time. When someone feels they are free with you, not trapped by you, their defenses lower. They start associating your energy with relief, with ease, with emotional safety, and the mind always revisits places where it can rest. This does not mean you disappear or play games. It means you lead with self-respect. You show interest without attachment. You express warmth without dependency. You allow space without withdrawal. That balance is rare. And rarity creates value. When you stop trying to secure her attention, something subtle shifts. She starts to notice your calm, your restraint, your centered energy. And her curiosity wakes up. The irony is powerful. The less you chase her thoughts, the more her thoughts chase you. Not because you vanished, but because you stayed whole. Because you did not hand over your emotional stability. Because you showed, without words, that your life moves forward, with or without approval. That signal is felt instantly. And once it's felt, it cannot be unseen. When you release the need to be chosen, you become choice itself. And that is when attraction stops being effort and starts becoming natural. And when you stand in that calm, something powerful becomes possible. Because now, instead of trying to be impressive, you can finally be understood. And being understood is one of the deepest human cravings there is. The mind does not bond through logic. It bonds through recognition, through the feeling that someone truly sees what you feel, without trying to fix it, judge it, or rush past it. Most people listen to respond. Very few listen to connect. When someone feels emotionally recognized, their defenses drop without effort. Their body relaxes, their breathing slows, their mind softens. This is not romantic fantasy, this is biology. Emotional validation activates bonding chemicals in the brain. It tells the nervous system, you are safe here. And safety is the soil where attraction grows roots. You don't create this by agreeing with everything she says. You create it by acknowledging what she feels. There is a massive difference. Agreement says I think like you. Validation says I understand you. One creates sameness, the other creates depth. And depth is what stays in the mind long after the moment ends. When someone feels emotionally unseen, their mind keeps searching. When someone feels emotionally met, their mind rests. And here is the paradox. The mind always returns to places where it can rest. That return is not conscious, it is automatic. It happens when she's alone, when she's quiet, when there is space for thought. Your presence becomes associated with emotional relief. And relief is addictive. This is why words that validate emotion have so much power. Not because they are clever, but because they remove inner friction. They say, without force, you make sense. And when a person feels they make sense to you, they feel closer to you. The brain rewards that closeness with attention, with memory, with mental replay. But this only works when it's real. The mind can detect false empathy instantly. Forced understanding creates discomfort. True recognition creates connection. This is why integrity matters. You are not saying words to get something. You are saying them because you are present, because you are grounded enough to hold space without needing control. When you reflect emotion instead of reacting to it, something shifts in the dynamic. You stop being another voice in the noise. You become a mirror. And mirrors are powerful. They show people parts of themselves they rarely feel allowed to express. When someone feels emotionally accepted without condition, their attachment system wakes up. They start to associate you with emotional safety, and safety opens the door to desire. This is also where many people sabotage themselves. They rush to solve, they rush to advise, they rush to impress. But attraction does not grow through fixing, it grows through feeling felt. When you slow down enough to recognize emotion, you communicate confidence. You show that you are not overwhelmed by feeling. You can sit with it, you can hold it, and that steadiness is deeply attractive. As you practice this, you will notice something subtle. Conversations deepen without effort. Silences feel comfortable, not awkward. She shares more, not because you asked, but because she feels safe to. And later, when she's away from you, her mind revisits that feeling, that calm, that sense of being seen without pressure. You don't need many words for this. You need the right intention behind them. And once you understand how emotional validation works, you stop trying to be memorable through intensity. You become memorable through presence, through understanding, through emotional alignment. This is how connection begins to anchor itself, quietly, naturally. And once that anchor is set, the mind does not let go easily. Once that anchor is set, something even deeper begins to happen. Her mind doesn't just feel calm with you. It starts to feel recognized. And recognition is one of the strongest forces in human psychology. Not flattery, not praise, recognition. The feeling that who she is, not just what she does, has been noticed and valued. Most people crave attention. Very few feel truly seen. Attention fades fast. Recognition stays. Attention excites the surface. Recognition touches identity. When someone feels recognized, the brain tags the experience as meaningful. Meaning is what turns moments into memories, and memories are what the mind revisits when you're no longer there. The human brain is selective. It cannot hold on to everything. It remembers what reinforces identity and emotion. When you recognize something specific, something personal, something real, you signal that she matters beyond convenience. You are not reacting to her presence. You are responding to who she is. That distinction changes how deeply you register in her mind. This kind of recognition creates warmth without pressure. It doesn't ask for anything in return. It doesn't demand closeness. It simply says, I notice you. And when someone feels noticed without being pursued, their curiosity awakens. Their mind starts connecting dots. Why does this feel different? Why does this feel grounding? Why does this stay with me? Neuroscience explains this clearly. When recognition is felt, the brain releases dopamine tied to self-worth and reward. The memory becomes emotionally reinforced. That means the thought of you doesn't fade when the interaction ends. It loops, quietly, subtly, often without her even realizing why. Your presence becomes linked to positive self-perception, and the mind protects and revisits what enhances self-image. This is also where sincerity becomes everything. Generic compliments disappear. Anyone can say nice words. Recognition requires attention. It requires listening. It requires restraint. It means you're not scanning for what to say next. You're fully present with what is being revealed. That presence communicates respect, and respect is magnetic. When you recognize something meaningful, you create an emotional imprint, not loud, not dramatic, but lasting. The mind begins to associate you with a feeling of being valued without being evaluated. And that is rare, especially in a world where most interactions feel transactional. When someone doesn't feel like they have to perform for you, their nervous system relaxes. And relaxation allows memory to deepen. This is why recognition strengthens attraction without effort. There is no chase, no urgency, no intensity, just clarity. The clarity of being acknowledged as a person, not a role, as a feeling being, not an object of desire. And paradoxically, that is what makes desire grow. As this dynamic settles in, you'll notice her energy shift. She becomes more open, more expressive, more curious, not because you pulled her closer, but because she feels safe leaning in. Her mind begins to replay interactions. Small ments, simple words. Not because they were impressive, but because they felt real. And when recognition is paired with emotional validation, something powerful forms. Trust. Not the kind built through promises, but the kind built through consistency. The trust that you see clearly, that you don't rush, that you don't force, that you notice without claiming ownership. This is when your presence starts living in her thoughts, not as obsession, but as familiarity, as comfort, as meaning. You become associated with a feeling she doesn't get everywhere, and the mind naturally returns to what feels rare and real. You don't need to be everywhere in her life. You only need to be distinct. And recognition is what makes you distinct. Because when someone feels truly seen, they don't forget who saw them. And yet, even recognition reaches its full power only when it is paired with freedom. Because nothing ignites desire faster than the feeling of choice. The human mind does not crave what it is given. It craves what it is allowed to choose. The moment someone feels emotionally owned, even subtly, attraction begins to suffocate. But when they feel free in your presence, desire wakes up on its own. Freedom is not distance. It is not indifference. It is not emotional coldness. Freedom is the absence of pressure. It is the quiet confidence that says, I want you here, but I don't need to cage you. That signal lands deeply in the nervous system. It relaxes resistance. It removes fear. It creates curiosity. And curiosity is the doorway to longing. When you don't rush replies, you communicate self-trust. When you don't demand reassurance, you communicate stability. When you don't cling to outcomes, you communicate abundance. None of this is done to provoke reaction. It happens naturally when you are centered in your own life, and that centeredness becomes magnetic because it feels safe and rare. The brain is wired to protect freedom. When it senses threat to autonomy, it rebels. When it senses respect for autonomy, it leans closer. This is why freedom amplifies attraction. It removes the instinct to pull away. It replaces it with the freedom to explore. And exploration is where desire grows. This is not about playing hard to get. That is still manipulation. That is still fear-based. True freedom comes from emotional self-sufficiency, from knowing that your value does not rise or fall based on someone else's attention. When you embody that, your energy shifts. You stop chasing connection. You start allowing it, and allowance feels like permission, not demand. The mind becomes most active when it is not being directed. When you leave space, imagination fills it. When you don't define everything, curiosity completes the picture. This is why mystery paired with clarity is so powerful. Clarity says who you are. Mystery leaves room to discover more, and discovery keeps the mind engaged. Freedom also communicates respect. It says you trust her ability to choose. And trust is intoxicating. When someone feels trusted, they feel elevated. They feel capable. They feel seen as an equal. That emotional elevation becomes associated with you. And the mind wants to return to sources of elevation. This is where many people panic. They mistake space for loss. They rush to gaps. They fear silence. But silence is not absence. Silence is room. Room for reflection. Room for curiosity. Room for emotional return. When you are grounded enough to let silence exist, the other mind often steps forward to fill it. And when she does, it's different. It's not because you pulled, it's because she chose. Choice creates ownership. Ownership deepens thought. The mind invests more deeply in what it chooses freely. That investment shows up as replay, as curiosity, as lingering attention when you are not there. Freedom also protects your integrity. You are not bending yourself to be wanted. You are standing in who you are and inviting alignment. That invitation is powerful because it carries no desperation, only clarity, and clarity gives others permission to feel without pressure. As this becomes your way of being, you stop trying to create desire. You simply stop blocking it. You remove pressure, you remove fear, you remove urgency. What remains is space. And in that space, the mind begins to move toward you naturally. This is when thoughts of you feel effortless to her. Not forced, not dramatic, just present. Because freedom does not trap the mind, it invites it. And once the mind walks in freely, it stays longer than anything ever forced could. When you combine emotional validation, recognition, and freedom, you step into a presence that is magnetic without effort. You become the kind of person who lingers in the mind not because of manipulation, not because of games, but because of the energy you carry. This energy is grounded, steady, and rare. It communicates confidence, respect, and understanding all at once, and the brain takes notice. The mind doesn't just remember words, it remembers the way it felt around you. That feeling becomes a loop, a place to return to, a mental refuge that subtly grows in influence every day. The moment you stop seeking approval, you gain authority. Authority over your own emotions, your own desires, your own focus. That authority is silently observed. The brain recognizes it immediately. It triggers curiosity, intrigue, and subtle longing because what is stable and unshakable feels powerful. The mind is drawn to certainty, not chaos, and presence that comes from inner security signals exactly that. It tells her subconscious, here is someone who does not need chasing, yet chooses to be present. That paradox creates fascination. Attraction is not built in desperation, it is built in consistency, in integrity, in emotional truth. Each interaction becomes a microcosm of who you are. When you validate emotions, you give comfort. When you recognize the unique aspects of her identity, you give meaning. When you allow freedom, you give respect. These three forces together create a mental imprint that is far stronger than charm, appearance, or clever lines ever could. They create a sense of gravity that naturally pulls her thoughts toward you. This is also where self-mastery shows its power. When you no longer rely on external validation to feel worthy, your presence becomes independent. That independence is magnetic because it signals abundance. People are naturally drawn to abundance, not scarcity. Scarcity creates pressure, anxiety, and resistance. Abundance creates curiosity, attraction, and desire. Your mind controls this dynamic before a single word is spoken, simply through how you hold yourself, how you manage your energy, and how you respond, or don't respond, to the push and pull of attention. Every thought she has about you begins to build unconsciously. She doesn't calculate it, she doesn't overthink it. Her nervous system remembers the calm, the recognition, the freedom. She recalls the relief of being understood without judgment. She notices the subtle cues of praise, NCE without demand. And those memories, reinforced by emotion, start to surface again and again. Each recollection strengthens the connection. Each mental replay builds desire. Each subtle emotional imprint deepens the bond without forcing it. This is why mastery of words alone is insufficient. It's not about having a magic line or a perfect phrase. It's about embodying the emotional ecosystem that allows the brain to attach naturally. Words amplify presence, but presence is built in the invisible layers of attention, patience, and self-possession. The three key words are effective only because they are embedded in a context of emotional intelligence, integrity, and freedom. Without that context, they are empty. As you practice this, your identity becomes the anchor. You are no longer reacting to her attention. You are projecting a consistent, stable energy that the mind wants to return to. This energy is what makes her think about you non-stop, not force, not trickery, not urgency, but steady, magnetic presence that aligns with the brain's deepest desire for security, curiosity, and meaningful connection. This is how transformation occurs. By being grounded, validating, recognizing, and allowing freedom, you create the environment where thought, curiosity, and attraction grow naturally. The power does not come from her. It comes from you. And when you step into that, everything shifts. The mind that once wandered freely now finds a home in the energy you embody. At this point, you realize that everything you have learned is not about manipulating thoughts, but about becoming the kind of presence that naturally invites them. Presence is the silent language that speaks louder than words, gestures, or appearances. It is the embodiment of calm confidence, integrity, and emotional intelligence. When you cultivate it, your energy communicates value without claiming it. It signals security without force. It creates desire without chasing. And the mind notices this immediately. The 3 key words you will use are not magical in isolation. Their power is amplified by who you are when you say them. If you say them with need, with anxiety, or with desperation, they fail. If you say them with calm, clarity, and sincerity, they imprint. The brain recognizes authenticity. It rewards it with attention. It loops it into memory. It makes your presence linger even when you are not there. That is the difference between being noticed and being unforgettable. Understanding this transforms how you interact. You no longer measure success by immediate reaction. You measure it by the quality of presence you bring. You measure it by the consistency of your energy. By holding your center, you stop reacting to uncertainty and start responding with purpose. This shift is subtle but powerful. It communicates without words that you are grounded, composed, and emotionally sovereign. That signal alone triggers curiosity and deep attention. When the mind senses safety, recognition, and freedom all at once, it begins to dwell on that source naturally. It recalls the way it felt in your presence. It remembers the calm that contrasted with the chaos of other interactions. It remembers the relief of not being pressured, the validation of being understood, and the freedom to choose. Those emotional imprints create repeated mental replay. Thoughts return, often subconsciously, because the brain craves the combination of calm and curiosity you offer. This is the invisible architecture of attraction. It is not about effort. It is about alignment. Alignment between your internal state and the emotional needs of the human mind. When you are aligned, attention follows naturally. When you are misaligned, even perfect words fall flat. This is why many fail. They char. Say the mechanics of attraction without mastering the emotional environment that allows it to flourish. Mastery begins internally, not externally. Your ability to sustain this energy changes everything. She will begin thinking about you not because you forced her attention, but because your presence has left an imprint. It is anchored in the emotional parts of her brain that respond to trust, freedom, and recognition. Each time she recalls these feelings, her mind returns to you. Each time she experiences that calm curiosity again, her thoughts wander in your direction. This is how desire builds without manipulation, and how thought becomes obsession naturally. By embodying this energy, you no longer need to wonder if she is thinking about you. Her mental attention becomes a byproduct of your presence, not your pressure. Her curiosity, longing, and engagement arise organically. The 3 key words act as triggers within the context of this energy, reinforcing the feelings you have cultivated. They are not a tool to coerce, they are a signal that communicates alignment, understanding, and freedom. They work because everything behind them is real and intentional. This is how you step into a new level of influence, not control, not strategy. Influence born from grounded presence, emotional intelligence, and respect for autonomy. You are no longer trying to impress, convince, or perform. You are being. And in being, you create an energy that is unforgettable. You become a man whose presence is thought of, felt, and remembered long after you are gone. That is the true power of mastery.